I've always just had that mentality of I'm going to do everything if I want to do it.
A lot of people will say, well, I can't do this. It's too exhausting. And, I'll probably stretch it out. But you didn't do that.
People will not give you chances if they don't see your possibility.
The world needs more of Priya.
Oh, I realized wow, people do pay attention to my hand and make decisions about me because of it. It just became my life's mission to make sure everybody knows what their simple good is.
How has the Indian community played a part both in Chicago and beyond in contributing and supporting your journey with the simple good?
You're not going to like my answer.
Well, we're here. Welcome to Between Us with Ashley and Chan. On this podcast, we aim to highlight individuals who are doing amazing things in their respective communities. And today, I'm joined by Priya Shah. Priya is the founder and CEO of The Simple Good, a nonprofit dedicated to helping the youth discover positivity through art and social emotional learning. Priya has shaped a vision that not only connects the underserved communities here in Chicago, but across the world through the universal language of art and storytelling. Her journey is so inspiring, and there's so much to uncover and learn from her. So let's dive right in. Priya, welcome to Between Us. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, it is my pleasure. And thanks to you, I've had the opportunity to travel to Chicago and discover this amazing city, even though it's for a short bit. But we'll talk more about that a little bit later. I wanted you to tell us more about The Simple Good.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit I founded about 13 years ago. And our mission is to connect the meaning of good from around the world to empower youth to become positive activists through art and discussion. And we do that by means of providing social emotional learning based arts programs to different schools and nonprofits, really challenging our kids to find their meaning of the simple good in their lives and understand how they can use that to fuel positive activism in our communities.
What inspired The Simple Good?
It's been a life's work. I grew up as an artist, and I did a lot of volunteer work all around the world. And that actually is what taught me what it meant to learn and teach resilience. And that profoundly impacted my life and the things that I had to overcome. And it really started with finding the small good things that lived within me. I had a lot of challenges of being a woman in this world, a woman of color and a woman of color born with one hand, and felt a lot of different levels of oppression at a very young age. And I would learn from the kids that I was actually working with, and they were the ones who were able to overcome so much within such a little time, simply by knowing and finding beauty within other people and knowing that it existed around them and knowing how to acknowledge it. And that is what really taught me, what is good about me, and that I wasn't being taught what I actually had within me versus what I didn't have. And that's when I realized, what is the simple good within me? The simple good within me is that I'm an artist and I can use that to make people happy. And if that is a tool to move me towards my purpose, then that's what I need to do. And I just realized that we don't teach kids that. We don't teach people that. We teach people what they're not versus what they actually are, especially in education. And it just became my life's mission to make sure everybody knows what their simple good is.
And I think kids are such great mirrors. You learn so much from them. And you're able to see the world from such a different perspective. I think to your point too, we lose that essence as we get older, and we're shouted by the noise of, well, you can't take this leap of faith, and why it wouldn't work out are accounted for versus highlighting why you cannot do it. So I think that's amazing. You chose visual arts and photography as the medium for your work. And I know it goes back to because you are an artist. But why did you feel that these forms of expression were going to be more instrumental or the right tools to help empower the youth?
We became a visual arts organization because that's what I know best. And that's how, I was able to teach something that I had an expertise in. And our goal is eventually to grow it into different mediums of art outside of visual arts. But essentially, it's any form of art expression is actually a tool for healing and growth and development of a human being. And, the visual arts is a very important tool because it allows us to create space for reflection within ourselves, without sound, without noise, without other people's voices. It's really about listening to ourselves when we receive a piece of artwork and when we also create it. And, it's not a preference of one art or another. I think for me, it's just engaging with the arts. And that's really what is going to help our youth develop into who they want to become.
When you were speaking, it dawned on me, when we're talking about the arts, it allows you that moment of just silence. Because I feel like in our day-to-day lives, we're so busy and so overstimulated. When do we just actually take a step back and just be in quiet mode to do some reflection or just shut your brain off? It's so hard. And I think it's so great. Like, I'm having an epiphany too. If I could just step away and look at something like an art piece and quieten the mind and just be in that moment. That in itself, that moment in itself can be so powerful.
Yeah, it's just a practice of observing, that we don't really practice anymore. We're very reactionary. And I think the visual arts is a powerful space for that. Just like when you go into art gallery, I think people are very intimidated by that, but it's really about observing art, whether it's a piece in an art gallery or a mural that you see on the street, and pausing and really think, what is the story that's being told here and how do I connect to it? And that actually is what builds empathy and connection to other people and other walks of life, simply by listening and hearing other people's story. And, it's not something that we have to always hear from other people. We can actually see it. And I think the visual arts really teaches you that.
As I mentioned not so long ago, that I'm here in Chicago to have this conversation with you. But you decided to start this nonprofit here in Chicago. And it can be hard to start something like in your hometown, especially in the USA, given the fact that you've also traveled. It's easier to perhaps take an initiative overseas because it's also financially cheaper. Why did you decide, no, I'm going to start in my hometown despite the challenges that may arise?
I mean, I'm from Chicago, so, I'm very passionate about the city. I think it's a very beautiful city, and it's also a city that's very supportive of social impact initiatives. A lot of people don't realize this, but most large movements that have impacted the world actually start from Chicago. Like house music is from here. A lot of legendary artists have come here that influences the movement of the rest of the world. But, the civil rights movement, a lot of things around activism actually starts in Chicago and then grows beyond. And the reason why is because the city is very oriented in supporting growth and equity for everybody, despite us being the most segregated city in almost the world. And so I think that because we face these challenges up front, we talk about them a lot. That is also why it's such a great breeding ground for social movements to start. And I think that me starting the Simple Good here in Chicago is the reason why it's been so supported and been able to grow and flourish in the way that it has, versus another city where it might not be as supportive an environment for it to thrive in this way.
Right, because you've been now going on, you started 13 years ago. So, and you've kept it going, which is an ode to itself, to your nonprofit. I wanted to ask you if you could just take me back to when you first started the nonprofit. What were your initial challenges?
I mean, I think with starting anything, it's getting people's belief and buy-in. Yeah, and what you're doing. I think the buy-in and the belief in the simple good is very easy and connects to everybody. And I think that is something that allowed me to really have a deeper conversation about our communities and the needs for our youth, and us really changing the narrative of what, from a deficit mindset to an assets-based mindset.
I love that.
Yeah, because that's really what it is. It's not about what we don't have. It's about what we have, and ensuring that our kids also know that so they can thrive as well. That conversation was easy for me to have because it was centered around the simple good. And that concept is something that everybody connects to.
Yes.
And I think that's what made it a little easier for me to make sure that not only one group of people was involved, but a larger constituency, because it's such a universal concept.
How did you then, once you had this vision and started having the conversations, expand this and grow into the communities? Like, did you go start with the school districts? If you could just walk us through that process and where it is today.
It's been a very organic growth. We started at one school, and the pilot program went very well because it was in collaboration with a teacher that was at the school, a friend that was a psychologist. We had a lot of supporters and collaborators that really put a lot of intention into what we wanted the program to be. It was all very serendipitous. I got connected to
it was
my
meant
old
to
high
be.
school teacher who saw what we were doing, and she helped me formalize the curriculum, which helped us expand it into more schools. And it was also word of mouth. A lot of teachers were hearing about what we did, and slowly people were asking themselves for us to bring our program in versus
Right.
it being a top-down approach. So that's actually how we started. We started very grassroots into like a school by school approach. And now we're still actually like that because in Chicago, it's really about community and getting our different schools really individually engaged with what we do. And, our goal is to continue to expand the programs in more schools.
How many schools right now?
We work with both schools and community-based organizations. So we have about 18 to 20 partners every year.
What is the grade spectrum, if you may? What grade do they start at, and till what grade does the program go into?
So our curriculum starts from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Over the years, if you've looked back, what have you learned from the students who have engaged in this and the feedback that you've gotten?
So much. But I think the biggest takeaway is that it allows our students to see themselves differently in a more positive light. And that leads to them really believing in themselves, seeing good within themselves. And that leads into them seeing good in the world and making decisions that also support that. And so it always starts with self. A lot of unhappiness in the world starts with people not being happy themselves.
Right.
And so, our kids being able to observe what's really bothering them because they now know what they want to strive to, and making the decisions that will help keep them going on that path is, the outcome of many of our programs.
And I think, too, it's so important to build that self-confidence from within because I think oftentimes nowadays we're so engaged in seeking validation from outside, and that helps fuel our self-confidence in some manner, which is so temporary and short-lived. And once that validation is gone, then what? Like, how do you continue to champion for yourself? So I think like when you find that confidence within you, it's easy to not be distracted by the superficiality of what's happening around you and not get so lost in the noise of it all.
Yeah, I mean, once you find your truth and grounded in really who you are, things can't really shake you. Things will keep on happening in our lives that we'll have to overcome, but you are very grounded and rooted in who you are, and you're able to overcome them because of that. And I think that's what you have to really teach and instill in a child at a young age. There's adults that still don't know how to do that.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah, and so when small things happen, it really can shake people off, whereas we should be developing humans at a young age to show and build resilience, because things will always come up, and we have to start that at a younger age so that kids can believe in themselves.
I'm curious, Priya, is how do you measure the success of this initiative, and especially with the social emotional learning component of it? Is there something that you go by?
So we use social emotional learning standards to assess the the success of each program. So we do pre and post and midpoint evaluations throughout the program. Our programs are long-term programs. So we're in a school anywhere from a full semester to a full year. And so we're always checking in and doing these self-assessments with our kids to see where they're growing and how they feel, how they feel about themselves. And through that, we can see and develop the growth measurements that we want to see. And our overall goal is to make sure that these self-assessments are growing. Kids feel more confident. They feel like they understand resources in their community. They feel like they can find positivity within them. And we're doing those checks. So our measurements of success is really seeing growth in those standards.
If I may ask, the communities that you're in right now, are they the underserved communities around Chicago?
Most of our communities are underserved, but we believe the simple good is for everybody.
Right.
This is not a program just for our underserved communities, although we prioritize them very much so. But our program is for everyone. We've worked in affluent communities. We've worked in middle-class communities. This is really meant for every child to have access to, because we believe everybody needs it, including adults.
Yep.
And so we also do adult workshops, so our adults can understand the importance of this work, and so they can also start practicing it.
What I had mentioned earlier, too, is being in Chicago, it's so great. But oftentimes when you hear about Chicago, it is overshadowed by violence. That's the first thing that comes to people's mind, is violence and crimes. But in terms of education, and when I was speaking to you on the phone, there's a lot of pilot programs that have come out of Chicago. So if you could highlight, into your knowledge, like some of the programs that have come out and who the states or the institutions that have adopted it?
Well, our program is based on social emotional learning, which is actually a brain trust that came out of Chicago. And so they standardized the whole process of teaching it, which has now been adopted by many states across the country, and has also become a requirement in many states to teach a certain number of hours to each student. And so, that standard of education is actually from here.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. And there's been, like we were talking about earlier, so many initiatives that actually come out of Chicago that benefit the rest of the country. And we are very much leaders in education and the arts because this also impacts our community so much. And, this is also why it's such a perfect place for us to be, because we are very much taking what's being built here and bringing it into the city.
And pardon me, I was completely unaware until you educated me. So in preparing for our conversation, I also did some research as I trying to take the mic out. And I found out that to continue this, what Priya said, is the School of the Art Institute of Chicago is a model for arts-based education, influencing similar programs in other cities like San Francisco and New York. Educational institutions have adapted Chicago's interdisciplinary approach to arts and humanities, combining art, technology, and design to foster creative environments. Another key thing that has come out of Chicago is the STEM-focused high school models and partnerships with local businesses that have been replicated in other states, aligning education with workforce demands. This approach has inspired programs like early college, high schools, and STEM apprenticeships, if I could speak, in such states such as Colorado and Georgia. So these initiatives aim to prepare students for future careers while addressing the national shortage in STEM fields. So these are another two examples of the great programs that have come out of Chicago being adopted by other states. And once again, for me, who's from California, I'm so in awe of Chicago. I mean, I just arrived here yesterday, and it saddens me that Chicago is so foreshadowed by its lack versus what it has to give.
Yeah.
The people are lovely. I was telling somebody early today that when I arrived late, but I went to go get dinner and it was still alive on a Wednesday night. The city is still alive. Yeah. And unlike certain parts of California, Northern California to be precise, it is also gripped with crime. But I didn't feel as unsafe here in Chicago as I would in San Francisco, which says a lot. Yeah. And I really wish that, Chicago would get its fairness versus just being dismissed because of the lack of knowledge and the preconceived notions that exist in people's minds.
Yeah, I mean, everybody needs to visit Chicago.
It's amazing.
And how incredible it is. And, if you actually go around the city, it's a very historic city. The beginnings of a lot of the country happened. The first open heart surgery was born here. Black History Month actually started in Chicago. And so, there's a lot of hidden history about the country that actually started here that also still drives why the city is so rich and deep and why people here really care about the city. And I think that I always say this all the time, but it's a testament that the simple good comes from Chicago. Everybody really does embrace that good and understands why it's so important and is so wanting the rest of the world to see that as well.
I call that now. The other thing too, Priya, what I observed as well is, and I don't know if you'll feel the same way, but there is a grounding that I feel here in Chicago that I don't feel in Northern California or some of the other states or even countries that I've traveled to. And I don't know if it's because of the churches that you see or the infrastructure or just the energy that resonates through Chicago, but it grounds you, and it grounds you in a manner that people are kind themselves, and there's none of the pretentiousness.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, a lot has happened here, and everybody knows that. Like, there's been a lot of tragic things that have happened here. There's a lot of historic things happen here. There's a lot of wins, but like within each of the ups and downs, the whole community is a part of it. And we know that we're all still working towards something greater. And I think that's what grounds us. Like, we are very much of an activist social movement city that's always trying to do better. And I think that when you have a mindset like that, you are grounded in, being connected to each other and really having community as the focus of your mindset.
Priya, in the past 13 years, your program has evolved a lot. So I'm curious as to what was your pilot program and what community did it start from?
The Simple Good actually started from a photography blog that I started called The Simple Good. And I started that with a few friends. And it was really about all of us capturing moments and photos that represented a simple good to us. And so we put together 54 photos and then invited the general public to submit their own. And within a week, that blog went viral. We got submissions from all of it.
Yeah. Interject and ask, 13 years ago, so was Instagram available then? What medium did you use?
It was when blogs just came out, like Tumblr, I think.
Tumblr? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yes, that's right.
It was a whole different time of social media, pre-social media.
Yes.
But yeah, the blog went viral and we got so many submissions of photos from around the world and people writing to us saying, thanking us for doing this, because what was interesting is that people are willing to be vulnerable in order to connect to each other. And people were submitting these beautiful, thoughtful photos and were spending hours on the site simply because they wanted to connect with people from all around the world. And we were getting submissions from people from all around the world. And it was a really beautiful movement, but I really wanted people to have this dialogue of connecting by the simple good, in person, face to face, and not it just being a digital thing. And so I held my first art exhibition here in Chicago and highlighted the most popular photos on the blog. In order to get into the exhibition, you had to bring your own photo, and then we added it to the exhibition.
What was yours?
Oh man, I don't even remember. Actually,
that's okay. It just popped into my head, so I had to put you on the spot.
No, that's a great question. I have to think about that one.
No worries.
I should know that. But I think that whole moment was a simple good for me, and I think that it was a great social experiment for me to really see how I truly wanted kids to be a part of it, especially our students here in Chicago that are quickly written off simply because of what they look like and where they're born and stigmatized as being negative. And our students also have the ability to share their simple good and bring good into the world. And so I connected with a friend that was connected with the school, and she brought me together with a school in Auburn Gresham, and I approached the teachers there and told them I have a blog. I would love for your students to be a part of it. I'll pay for the supplies and the final showcase. I would like to see them paint a picture of their meaning the simple good. And I spoke to a couple of teachers and they were so excited and they were just like, yes, because our kids repeat so many things that are negative and we just need to talk about what's positive. And so we actually use that photography blog to teach our kids about different examples of simple good to inspire their own image of their simple good. And what we saw was that it was really building an understanding of the process of positivity and how that's actually real. And that enabled the process of cope. Right. And for us to really digest what is happening in our lives, who we are and how we can create positive outcomes. And at the end of the final showcase, it was just such a beautiful moment because the kids were expressing themselves, their parents were hearing them, the larger school community was also understanding what was going on. And they just asked for us to bring this program back every single year.
That's amazing. That's so good.
Yeah.
And kids need that. They need to be heard. And in listening to you describe that moment, I can imagine maybe some parents are hearing their child's innermost thoughts at that present time.
Yeah, that happens a lot too. They'll have parents come and they will come up to their kids afterwards and say, I had no idea you were feeling that way. And sometimes this is the way for us to build those bridges that aren't
open up a dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. And those are also beautiful moments.
So 13 years was when you started. What's the secret to your success?
Knowing when you're in your purpose, you are living within that in a very resilient way. No matter what comes, that you have to overcome it. It's not something that is going to be a blocker. You naturally figure out a solution. And I think that's what it is if something is truly true to you, you will always figure out a way to keep going. And that's what's happened is I know that it's been my purpose to bring this into the world. And it's also my purpose to teach everybody their simple good. And hopefully that gets passed on and other people do the same, and that's what I feel like I had to spend my time doing, despite people not always believing in it.
So which brings me to my next question is, when you have those moments where people don't believe and challenging times, for instance, the whole world went through COVID, how did that impact the program? Did it deter you or did it bring about more opportunities?
It actually was a huge igniter in growing the organization because finally people are forced to pause. And you really did have to find your simple good. When you are in your home and really not being able to connect with one another, you have to go inside. And we actually got even more demand for the programs during that time. And I always say, I kind of make a joke. I'm like, it only took a pandemic for people to understand the importance of our work,
Right.
And our programs grew by 400%.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. But it was a testament of, the truth of the work. And I think that how people really need it. And it fueled me because I knew that this is a time that we even have to step up even further.
Right.
And so, it was awesome. We were fueling people with hope in a very deep way. And it was an exciting time. It was an exhausting time because while at the same time, our kids are still, and our community still suffer with so many inequities that didn't allow them to get access to our programs, which is why we're here in the first place. And so we had to get very innovative and creative about how do we still give access to our kids despite not having the technology or internet at home.
How did you manage that?
We ended up writing a book. I wrote a book.
Wow.
So went old school and literally collaborated with artists from all over the world and created our first social emotional learning based art activity book.
During the pandemic, how long did that project take you?
It took a few months. It took like 3 or 4 months, which is crazy.
That's a quick turnaround.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a very quick turnaround.
Yeah, it was. But it was so needed.
Yes.
And, it was something that, again, was a huge passion project that I really had to fuel and push in order for us to meet this unmet need. And we asked the schools, like, if we had this book, who wants it, how many need it, or how many book copies, and we got a request for 3,000 books across all Chicago public schools. And so, it was a huge time of really trying to get innovative and creative to continue to support the communities, and it worked out. We still actually use these books in our classrooms. We sell them to adults. We sell them at shops. So now anybody can have access to our curriculum to help support everybody's mental health. So
what a time to be alive, huh?
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here in awe, first of all. And secondly, as you're working feverishly through this, trying to meet a very pressing demand, how are you feeling yourself? Are you just riding on no, this is beyond me. This goes beyond me and I need to get this done and I'll rest when I have time? What was your approach?
Yeah, I mean, that period of time, and I think a lot of us executive directors that are running nonprofits were feeling this, is that we had to keep pushing. And we are all on this kind of adrenaline rush of urgency.
Yes.
And so that's what we rode. And rest, to me, comes in these small wins that happen throughout the journey. It's not something... Unfortunately, I'm not the best at taking a vacation, and I'm trying to get better at that. But I think that there's moments where you are forced to pause and reflect on what you've done and just taking that in. And I think that's been really beautiful for me.
That's amazing. Oh my God, what an inspiration
thank you
are. But, and thank you for working so tirelessly, because you've realized that, yes, your health and your whatever you're doing there's a bigger purpose that fuels you. And a lot of people will say, well, I can't do this. It's too exhausting. And, I'll probably stretch it out. But you didn't do that. And the world needs more of Priya. Needs more Priyas out there. So thank you for the great work that you're doing. Okay. You recently celebrated your 11th year fundraiser for the Simple Good. A reflection from that night.
Oh, my gosh. So this was so we call it City of Big Dreams. It's an annual multidisciplinary art showcase where we bring artists from all across the city, across different mediums of art. So live painters, dancers, singers, jazz artists, hip hop artists, everybody.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it's an amazing experience of really the amazing art scene that we have here in Chicago. And this one was our biggest one yet. We were in a new venue. We raised $109,000 to support our
Amazing.
programs. And it really was an exciting moment because it made me realize we're entering the next chapter of the Simple Good, to be really big, much bigger, to help meet the need in a larger scale than we have before. So I'm really excited about how we're setting ourselves up to grow and how so many much bigger, exciting things are to come. And yeah, it was just, that's kind of what I'm reflecting on. It's like, wow, we did it.
That's great. And Priya too, but this program has gone beyond Chicago, right? So if you could tell the audience more about that, where it has influenced other parts of the world.
Yeah. So before the pandemic, we used to do programs in New York, in East Africa, in Uganda and Rwanda. And we did a few workshops, actually a few pilot programs in Europe, in the UK and in Croatia.
Wow.
So yeah, have expanded our programs outside of Chicago to show how the program does work everywhere and the concept of the simple good resonates everywhere. And what I would do is have our kids here in Chicago connect to our students abroad and have them actually understand and hear each other's simple good, and really, one, have a dialogue on why they connect to it, and two, what is also happening in different parts of the world and what our different life experiences are, whether the same or the difference. And what we realized is that a lot of our kids felt connected to a part of the world that they thought they were never going to be connected to. And that's what really gets our kids to understand global competency and build empathy.
Very important.
Yeah, and not be afraid of the other. And right now we're at a time where everybody's afraid of everyone. And what we really need to teach is having cross-cultural dialogue and global connection so that we understand that we're all actually global citizens and connected to each other.
It's a little saddening because, to your point when you say we're afraid to connect. And I always say this to my friends jokingly. I said, we live in such a big yet small world, thanks to globalization. We're so connected and with social media platforms. But there's appears to be in recent years a bit of barriers that have come up. You see a little bit of segregation happening, but that warrants a much bigger dialogue and conversation than what we're here for today. And so, it's interesting that in this day and age that we haven't still moved past it. So I'm grateful that the children are able to see past that because, again, they're the mirrors to the soul, as they often say. But I'm also now curious as to how did the African program come about?
Yeah, we had a partnership actually in Rwanda, and it was through a friend who was a genocide survivor, and she really was doing an initiative out there and wanted to bring the arts because she really believed in it, and she wanted to bring our program out there. And so when we started talking about it, we were thinking about doing a mural program, and then we were looking at the community and realized that the school doesn't have a proper infrastructure for a mural. And it ended up leading to a larger project where we decided to build a school. And so it became a 3-year project where we were working in Rwanda. And that also led us to have partnerships across the border in Uganda.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was a really beautiful kind of cross-cultural collaboration in order for us to bring the simple good halfway around the world.
I want to be part of your team.
Yeah, it was great. I'm looking forward to
amazing.
bringing it back internationally. Unfortunately, during COVID, Africa really did suffer. East Africa really suffered, especially in the communities that we worked in. But our hope is to come back and be there soon.
And we're coming back online slowly but steadily, so... Priya, you've mentioned throughout the conversation thus far as to how the kids and everybody can find the simple good. But my question to you is, in our day-to-day lives, there are times when we get consumed by some of the negative aspects. And depending on the circumstances behind it, it can be daunting and sometimes overtake you, like better, but the negative components end up weighing heavy. So what is your advice for both children and adults alike, anybody who's listening to this, as to how they can put those fears at bay and reprogram their brain into the direction that they were going in, which is positive thinking and bringing about light in their lives.
Yeah. I mean, I think that people sometimes take for granted the small things and how powerful they are within our lives. And so, like, every day practicing gratitude and understanding what is the simple good of today that I know that I have and I know that I will bring. And it could be the smallest thing. Like, I'm going to make somebody smile today, or I'm going to make someone food, or I'm going to eat the thing that makes me so happy. You know, these small things really help us process what is good in our lives that we have right in front of us and how we can now start bringing that into the world. And when we think, sometimes we're challenged to think of things in such a grandiose impact way.
Yes.
But the largest impact that you can do is these small everyday notions of good, being kind to somebody else, helping someone, keeping open the door. And you don't understand how much of an impact that actually makes on somebody.
It really does.
Yeah. And I always say, it's like, you actually never know how much impact you're making on somebody until maybe many years later. But you do have to remember that someone's always carrying your good that you have spread. And that's why we have to do more of it.
We've talked a lot about the incredible work that the Simple Good is doing and the program that you're building and all the impact that's having across Chicago and globally. But now I want to shift the conversation a little bit and get to know you, Priya, the person behind the movement a little bit more, your personal journey. So who was Priya before she became the founder and CEO of The Simple Good?
I was an accountant.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
I know. It was
Gosh.
weird. It was weird. Yeah. Well, I ended up going into business after I did a lot of volunteer work abroad, and I saw the gap between business and the social sector. And there's a lot of amazing initiatives that are done around the world through the nonprofit sector. And for some of the organizations I was working with, there was no support from the business end.
Yes.
And the business, then I would witness the business folks wanting to help, but they have no idea how nonprofits actually are doing the work. So there's a disconnect between the two.
There's a huge disconnect, yes.
It's not that one is better than the other. It's that two groups of people that need each other to create sustainable solutions speak two different languages. And I was observing that, and I felt like I needed to learn both sides in order for me to really be able to come back and make a difference. And so I intentionally went into business school and I studied accounting and finance in undergrad. And I subconsciously knew I'm going to learn these skills in order to bring it back to the community. And so I was in accounting and finance, and everybody was like, I thought you were going to be in art school. And I was like, well, I'm here, and we are going to learn about the debits and credits. And yeah, so I was there, and I was working at EY, and I actually started the organization on the side while I was working full time.
So to take it a step back, you said you did accounting and finance at undergrad. So volunteering started for you
In high school.
In high school. What was it, that one moment, or where did you go that it was that wow epiphany moment for you?
I was in India the first time, and I worked at Mother Teresa's orphanage. Yeah, it's a very powerful place naturally, and it can be very overwhelming to some people. And that's where I really learned from the kids there. You know, these kids had been on this earth for a very short period of time and had been through more than most of us had as a result of adults and the things that they did to them. And I just felt going in that they were still more resilient than I was, you know, because they knew how to find good within other people and around them despite things that had happened to them. And because they could find that, they knew good existed in the world, and that's why this is a life worth living. And I just felt like, you know, I was going through my own growing pains as a high school teenager person. And I was like, what am I complaining about? You know, and that's where I had my epiphany moment of like, what is good about me? What is my simple good? And I realized I'm an artist. You know, I can use that to make people happy. When I give them my art, people are happy. And I need to use that to really move towards a path of really fulfilling my good. And that's kind of what has put me on this journey. From there, I went to South Africa and Brazil, and I was always working in underserved communities no matter where I went. And I learned from every single space I was in, because when you do work that gives back, you're the one that's actually getting something back.
Yes.
You know,
I think it's so amazing that you had that epiphany as a teenager. Usually when we're trying to find ourselves and you're coming to terms with being a young adult, navigating the hormonal changes that your body's going through. And oftentimes as you move into different phases of your life, your 20s, it's easy to lose those moments when you're going through different rites of passages.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this was your calling because it has never left your side.
Yeah, no, I felt like I don't want anybody to be treated like I was growing up. And that's just a shift of mindset that we have to develop in the world. And I think that is something that you have to do. It's a long-term game. All these things, moments of change, are a long-term game. And I was like very passionate about making sure that we can teach it, because I knew that this was a truth in the world that people don't talk about. And so, yeah, I have been at it for a very long time.
Now, I also want to ask you a little bit more about yourself, which is what some of your close friends and family know, the Priya that they know best, to the extent that you feel comfortable disclosing, so people get to know you beyond, your philanthropic work.
What would they say?
What's the fun stuff you do, your hobbies?
I'm like a big foodie. I like know every restaurant. I like will tell you what's good, what's not.
What's your favorite food?
I like anything. I'm vegetarian, but anything like super flavorful. So I love Thai food and Italian food. I love fusion food. Like,
it's so good.
Yeah, anything like super innovative, I'm really fascinated about. I love arts in general. Like, I know I work in the arts, but I am the person who will be at every gallery opening. I love just learning from that, and I have a big artist community that's also my friends, and I think that creating things in general is just exciting to me. I love traveling. I don't know. I just like making things. Like, I'm the person, I'll start making like shea butters and facial oils. Like, oh my gosh.
Is that creative side of you?
Yeah.
So I'm not an artist, but who is your favorite artist?
I don't ever have an answer for that, because I think there's so many great creatives, and it's so hard to say there's a favorite. I think there's so many that influence me in different ways, and I pay attention to all the different forms of art. So, artists that are older and poets that are older versus those that are. Yeah, I love poetry. I love music, jazz. I love global music, and because I've lived in so many different places, I do pay attention to, language of different parts of the world and how they interconnect. And I'm really fascinated about that type of history. I love architecture. I'm like a nerd. That's what I am.
I love it. I love it. It's like music to my ears. This is amazing. You have shed a little bit of light into your personal struggles growing up. But before I talk a little bit more about that, I want to know who or what inspired you.
Oh, my mom, of course. I mean, I think she's like one of the strongest people I've ever met. And to be as strong as her is like something I've always wanted to be. She grew up in East Africa and Uganda. Was a part of the South Asian exodus in the 1970s, and became refugee in India, and then came to America, and like had to make a lot of sacrifices because of those shifts. And a lot of people don't know that history even now. And I think that just learning how this woman had to navigate so many different spaces and lands, at a very young age, and then come to this country and also navigate that on her own is really powerful, and
without excuses, because you sit here before us today.
Yeah, and she made no excuses, to make it within very little resources. And so I think even part of my resilience is like, I didn't have anything creating this organization. I didn't have a big funder or any things that like kicked it off. And part of it is like, I see her created everything that we have today in the States. And because you can build anything that you want to if you really have that strength. And
and this country gives us such opportunities to do so. There's an opportunity at every corner if you're willing to have faith in yourself and just believe in you and just set forth. And I really feel like the universe shows up to guide you.
Yeah,
I really do. And to your mom, what a rich tapestry.
Yeah,
she has.
Yeah, and I think because of her background, it's also made me very multicultural and globally oriented. And I don't feel like I'm just an Indian identity. It's this East African Indian identity, which is also living in America. And there's a lot of connection points between all of them. And I think that in a time where we think everything is so separated, that's just not how I see the world. I see the world very connected, and part of that is influenced by her.
And I have to concur because, people are multifaceted beings. So I think it's sad when we get pigeonholed into a subsect or be defined by certain labels. And to extend it further to your point of, oh, well, you're Indian, so you should abide by a certain set of rules and only be doing what appeases the community. But just like we're multidimensional, we're in a multidimensional community, you know. And I too come from a small island, so and because my family is placed all over the world, I was nodding along because I relate so much in having that vast knowledge, and not knowledge, but like workings of different cultures and different countries, which is a huge advantage to me.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, again, it's globalization has brought so many things to our doorstep, and we're not taking advantage of it in the right sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Priya, you've been born without a left hand, and I can't even imagine what you must have experienced growing up. How I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, how did you navigate the societal perceptions when you became aware of them?
I mean, as a kid, people are really blunt, and you just kind of. I would ask my mom, "What do I say?" She's like, "Tell them you're born like that," and I was. And I mean, I think I was fortunate for a period of time to be in a community that, I mean, there was always challenges, but we all ended up becoming friends, and I did feel that support at the same time. But I think at every stage of life, as you enter new communities and new types of people that aren't familiar with you, then you face that confrontation again. And so I think that, because I had a very supportive mom and brother and family in general that did not let me feel bad about it, that's the way that I also confronted other people. And additionally, I always felt I could do everything, and I do everything. And so I kind of thought people were crazy when they were like
they are
judging me about and feeling bad about me. I'm like, well, I kind of can do more than you can. So, like
that's great.
So to me, it sometimes never made sense.
But especially when you're in high school and sometimes you can get the mean crowd of friends.
I don't think I had a mean crowd of friends, but I think that there were people that just didn't feel comfortable around me because of whatever their fears were. But I played basketball in high school. I was very engaged and involved, and people knew me and they knew that I could do a lot of things. I mean, I did have an issue with playing basketball and getting cut from the team because the coach didn't believe that I could play with one hand, and I ended up,
Did they not see you practicing?
Well, yeah. It's what I learned is that people will not give you chances if they don't see your possibility. And because he never saw my possibility, oh, she's good now, but she won't be good later. That was a mindset that people will have. And so they will cut you off earlier than you should be. And it was the first time I realized that, because I didn't actually grow up. I grew up in a very inclusive community, and I always felt like this was a non-issue. This wasn't a thing. And that was the first time I realized, like, wow, people do pay attention to my hand and make decisions about me because of it. And it's very important for me to realize that so I can overcome that as well. And, because of the support of my community, I ended up being back on the basketball team because everybody defied him and said, no, she's actually good. And she actually had more points than some of the other girls that made the team, and she should be on the team. And it was an example, I think, to many people that I'm not going to let people stop me. And I've always just had that mentality of I'm going to do everything if I want to do it. And, people need to learn from this example that anyone can do whatever they want to do. And we have to believe in people and support in people and for their dreams so that they could achieve it.
And I remember from a conversation to you, you ended up being on the varsity team.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And
good for you.
Yeah, I played a lot. And so basketball is still very important to me. Because
nothing is impossible.
Yeah, no, it's not, and I think
it's the limitations we put on ourselves. And sometimes when that fear creeps in, the self-limiting belief can overtake you. But you just have to take a step back, just like with anything in life.
For me, it wasn't actually me limiting myself. It was other people. So I think we have to be aware of the conscious bias that we put on other people because of how we perceive them. And we actually sometimes don't realize that we are limiting other people's opportunities because of our subconscious decisions. And this can apply in, women, male and females, that could be applied in racism, that could be applied in our abilities and ableism. These types of forms of discrimination are all based on other people limiting others. And that's what actually leads for ourselves to doubt ourselves. So, we have to be conscious about how we treat other people and where our own biases are.
True.
So that we can not extend that externally.
Priya, of all the things that you have gone through personally, what was your most single biggest challenge that stands out?
Honestly, I think the biggest challenge has been building my organization, and the amount of personal and professional labor it takes for anybody to really start something that's true to them and also that serves other people. I think that, I come from the corporate side and I see how much work goes there, but nonprofits are way more work.
Yep.
For not as much, material gains.
Yes.
And none of us do things for money really, but money is needed in order to do the work. And creating this bridge of understanding of this big societal gap and how so many people are ignorant to a lot of the challenges that we face is challenging, and that's something that we have to grapple with every day. And I think that kind of labor people don't truly understand. And like I said earlier, it's like impossible to take a vacation. That shouldn't be the case. We should all treat human beings that are serving other people and give them the privileges or allow it to be acceptable for all of us to take the privileges of getting rest.
Yeah.
And I think it's been a surprising challenge.
It's so interesting that you said, because I come from corporate America too. And starting on this journey with YouTube, it is a whole different challenge. And sometimes I find myself scratching my head as to like, Ashleen, are you sure you want to continue? It's so much easier to go back to doing what you were doing. At least there may not be that much for work-life balance, but there is some peace. You can afford some peace and a timeout, even though the timeout comes in only 2 weeks a week, a 2-week vacation a week, but that's still something. This is there's no hours to this.
Yeah.
It's really a labor of love.
Yeah, definitely.
Priya, I also want to pivot the conversation to, you've spoken a lot about community as it relates to the simple good, but I want to extend the conversation to the Indian community because they strengthen our numbers as well. How has the Indian community played a part, both in Chicago and beyond, in contributing and supporting your journey with the simple good?
You're not going to like my answer.
Well, we're here to have an honest conversation and to open the dialogue, right? So we can't always put a bow on conversations that need to be had.
Yeah. I think when I first started the organization, I actually did not get any support from the Indian community, which was, really hard.
I can imagine.
Because, some of my lessons and inspiration was from India. And, I was disappointed to see that Indians as the richest minority in America that has the means to gain and also is one generation away from poverty, right? A lot of us came from lesser means into America, now does not have the consciousness to give back to others in the country that they live in now. And, I had to grapple with that for a long time, that I'm really alone in this journey. And now I think that there's a bit of a change of consciousness where we are getting a bit more support, and it's awesome to see this shift of dialogue and openness from certain individuals. But I think we have a long way to go in terms of not only supporting just our own, but we need to support those around us because we also benefit from them.
Yes.
We're working with different types of folks. Our communities are diverse, and the reason why we have our wealth is because of everybody else. And so it's our responsibility to give. And a lot of the things that we have challenges in our communities, we have the capacity to really create a lot of economic change.
Yes, we do.
And I think we have to be more strong and leaders of really thinking about everyone and not just our own.
Do you think, and this is just my personal thought and opinion, it comes from the age-old notion of not really being in support of the arts program? So one, there's a lack of understanding, and two, so much as being Indian, what is being pushed down our throats is in the direction of certain fields. So when it comes to arts, they don't really understand it. So they want to be hands off.
I don't think it's specifically for arts. I think it's just about contributing to Black and brown communities. We don't give to other people. We just give to ourselves. We're more likely to give to India than to give to anybody else, you know? And so I think that there's a education that's needed of like why it's important to support other people. There's a proximity that also needs to be created for South Asians in America to extend their circle to include non-South Asians so that they can really understand, you know, what these functions of supporting other communities actually look like. And I think, you know, that's been the challenge, is that we just don't hang out with each other. My friends group is very diverse. Like anytime I host a dinner, everyone thinks it's like a dinner with the UN because it's like everybody. And I would love to see more of that happen.
And this is why I asked you in the beginning of our conversation as to why did you choose to start here in Chicago? Obviously, being your hometown, but because of your travels and your background, I alluded to the fact that it may be easier to start this initiative overseas. But, you know, again, to your point, is we benefit from the communities around us, but we're not supporting. Yeah, but we're so greedy. We want to take everything good that comes out of it. And that is so sad.
Yeah, and that's also not what our culture teaches us.
True.
So
Absolutely.
like if we actually go to the root of South Asian spirituality and history, it's about all and how we're connected to all and how there's God within all.
Yes.
And, you know, we have lost that connection and understanding and have shifted in a direction that I don't think is healthy. And I want to see more South Asians engage in social impact. I have a lot of friends that are, and it's super exciting to see that small group of people, but I want this to be a large group of people and for us to educate our parents and, you know, our children and the next generation about why they need to engage as well.
Do you think now people are coming around because of your success of the simple good that they can now get behind?
Definitely me being an example is opening people's eyes up to how they can get engaged, which is exciting to see. But I also think that there's just also a shift with the next generation since COVID and George Floyd of people talking about, okay, we need to change something. We need to have a different dialogue and I need to get more involved. And so I think that's been good. But the challenge is that it can't just be a phase. It's something that has to keep going. It's not just a talk or a dialogue. It's not a panel. You have to actually get into the communities and do something. And we're so quick to go to the bars, but what if we went to a fundraising event to support the community that we serve, you know, and just shift how we're spending our time, right? So that we can inform and educate ourselves and get more activated.
And you bring up an excellent point, Priya, which is sometimes the conversation happen for the moment and then they don't extend or go beyond and really trickle into the parts of your life or other people's life where it's most needed. And people think, oh, I'm just going to go and have a conversation with my parents and that makes me feel good. That's the end of it. But no, it needs to be continuous work in progress. And we really need to see the mindset shift long term. So that we can cultivate it for the future generations, because the next generation is our future. They're the leaders. You know, you talked about your mom and her journey. Did she have a lot of support from the community?
I think, you know, she grew up with more South Asians than I did.
Okay.
Because, you know, she lived in India and she was here. But I think that what challenges her generation and ours as well is the use of shame in everything that we do.
I can't roll my eyes on camera. But yes.
I mean, that's, you know, something that she struggles with, and, you know, you see it all the time. And that was something that's applied to me and it impacted her. And it's something that I still continue to see today. And I think that we have to have like more of an overt conversation of how we're still using shame to not only hold ourselves back, but also other people outside of our communities. And it's not healthy for anybody. And now, you know, if you see what's happening in India, it's a very dangerous result of years and years of shame. And nobody can be feeling proud of what is happening, right? And this is representing all of us. And I expect a more stronger conversation against it, but it's really frightening to see that South Asians aren't speaking up, you know, instead supporting it. And this is about generational trauma since independence. and people justifying these things to happen. But the reality is that none of this should happen. And we really need to confront what happened in the past so we can grow out of it.
I think a lot of conversations that are happening around that and the justification is coming from people who are tone deaf, which angers me. And again, it just makes me shake my head at like the day and age we live in, and people are still having conversations that come from a time that goes beyond my grandmother or, you know, my, like, well, 5 generations back, and you're still living in that same mentality, which is terrible.
Yeah, it's crazy because, you know, Diwali is coming up and people think that that's a Hindu religious holiday. It's actually not. If you look at the history, Diwali was celebrated by everybody. And it's actually just an indicator of the days getting darker and shorter. And therefore, all of us that live in the community have to bring our light in order to get through this darker time.
Yep.
That was everybody. There was Hindus, there was Christians, there was Muslims. Everybody celebrated it together. And now we've turned something that was so spiritual and beautiful as a community-oriented time into something that's just consolidated to one type of people. And that's a dangerous thing. And so when I celebrate Diwali, I invite everybody because it is for everybody.
Yes. And well, I come from Fiji. So when we used to celebrate when I was back in Fiji, it would be a week-long holiday. The entire nation would come to celebrate, not just Diwali, Easter, and also Eid. So those were the 3 major religions in Fiji. And I don't know if the holidays are still as long or the duration period for celebration is still as long. But I think even in Singapore, they celebrate all the major holidays. So people are aware of everything, right? Of all the different cultures. But I think to play the devil's advocate just for a moment is there has been such a miss with Diwali here in the United States and has been so dismissive that I think now that it's getting more mainstream recognition, it has taken away from its root meaning of it. I think that what people like you and I gravitate towards, it's become to a certain extent more of an, oh my gosh, I can't believe I say this out loud, more of an embellished social.
Yeah, it's like Christmas.
Yeah.
It's like very
Which is
material.
great. We want you to celebrate that,
Yeah.
but there's a deeper meaning behind it.
Yeah, no, and that's what needs to be explained. You
Yes.
know, like when I celebrate, I make sure that we talk about that because that's what really connects us. And that's what all these holidays to me mean is like it's a time of reflection and everybody that's involved is meant to be here to connect to each other.
Yes.
And I think, yeah, it doesn't matter how fancy the space is, like we need to just pause for that. And I think when we start reflecting on that more, maybe we can be a bit more harmonious in society again.
I also want to ask you, you know, we're making strides and the Indian community has a long way to go, but hopefully after this conversation, more people will tune in and really carry the dialogue beyond what they hear and practice it into their daily lives and then further into the communities. But I also want to discuss or broach the conversation around health, creativity, and the importance of social emotional learning. What would be your message to the community so we can collectively keep moving the needle?
The larger community or?
The Indian and the larger community. You've touched upon the Indian community, but I think like if you were to sum it up so that it hits home a little bit more.
I think I always think of my mom with this, like sometimes our parents are in such a deficit mindset of what we don't have. And just really, again, like I said earlier, is how do we really embrace the simple good for everybody and remind ourselves that within our child, within our friends, that exists and there's a strength there. And I think that supports wellness because it gets rid of shame. It really challenges the stigmas that we put on people. And overall, that impacts our mental health and how we perceive ourselves and our own identity. And if we really want to create a well-being and a positive space for each other and change those types of stigmas that we create as South Asians, we really need to embrace the assets that live within people that are around us and really acknowledge it, right? And say that to people. We're not very good expression people. Like, right? Like I feel like Indians don't really give compliments to each other, you know? But, you know, I think that's good to do and for us to embrace as like families and communities.
Right.
Like, hey, you're really good at this and I appreciate it. And that's it, you know? And just shifting the culture and how we speak about each other and value each other.
I guess I'm lucky in that respect because coming from Fiji, it's an island culture. So sometimes we carry the same sentiments of the Indian stigma and like the deficit mindset. But the slight differences that we aren't afraid to show our love.
That's
Like
amazing.
I go and smother my munchkins.
Oh.
Two of my nephews are 18 and 21, and I will just bully the heck out of them, and they let me, which is
That's
amazing. And bully
awesome.
them in the way of like, come here, I want to hug you, and then I'm gonna have my hand on their shoulder and not let go. And they don't like, try to shrug it off because they know auntie's here just for
Yeah.
a short time, and we're just gonna let her do whatever, and I'll mess up their hairstyle, and it's okay because they know that's our thing and our affection. And in that regard, I am grateful. So I'm trying to make sure that that carries on to the next generation,
Yeah.
and that people see from our actions. Another example I'll share is, when our parents were growing up, there were a lot of misgivings and miscommunications. And there was an instance, I think I must have been in my early 20s, and I said to my mom, I'm not going to carry on the parents' burden onto our relationship. Whatever transpires, good, bad, or the ugly, between us cousins and this generation, it's for us to solve or walk away from. But we are not going to carry the weight or the burden of whatever transpired before we came into the picture. And I cannot believe that, like, it's not something that anybody told me. This is an epiphany I had to myself, and I went and had the conversation with my mom. And I'm so glad I stuck to that, because now I have such a beautiful relationship with my cousins, and all the bygones are bygones because so much time has passed and they're all older. And I'm appreciative of that. Not to say that there aren't moments, because there's that conditioning that they have, but I'm grateful. So I'm hoping that what we do now, the children can carry forward.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great point. That's like, it's not universal that every Indian family operates that, but for us to continue to value that across the diaspora, that we need to appreciate everybody and show that affection that you do for your nieces and nephews, and not feel shame around it.
Through life and everything that you know of in a day, where everyone wants it all, and now in relationships, what is your advice to people who are navigating the being in a relationship, be it with a partner, family, friends?
I think everybody comes into your life for a reason, and you're meant to have, this is going to be very nerdy and financial, but a diverse portfolio of people within your book of strengths, right? People with strengths and that add to you in your life in different ways. And therefore, you're not going to get everything in one person. But if there's love, and care that's mutual, then I feel like it's a natural thing for us to understand what we're going to get from each other and what we're going to give to each other, And I always say that, like, you can't expect everything from everyone, and they won't for you either, and understanding that there needs to be a balance between what we seek from people and what we're also seeking to give other people. And I always try to focus on what am I giving people, right? Because that's what helps me understand myself better.
Lastly, and as we wrap up this conversation, I want to ask you, Priya, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, our hope is and the goal is to bring the simple good all around the world again. And so, that is the goal, is that, I'll always be in Chicago and a part of Chicago, but in the next 5 years, we'll also be many other places.
Yes.
So I'm looking
And you will be. I'm really excited for the growth.
Yes, I am too.
We're going to put that out there right now.
So anybody interested in supporting that cause, please let me know. But yeah, it's bringing it and really making this a global movement, and showing how the simple good comes from Chicago, and another movement has started from here that'll influence everybody.
That's great. And what about your personal goals?
Personal goals is to take a vacation. That is the short-term personal goal.
And then lastly, what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
I think that what I hope is that for people that feel like they aren't what society wants them to be, that anything is possible, right? Like, you don't have to be any type of person, or you don't have to look a certain type of way, and you don't have to fulfill other people's expectations. As long as you go towards your truth and bring good to other people, you can be whoever you want. and that will be your legacy.
On that note, thank you all for joining us on Between Us with Ashley and Chan. Priya, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
want to say something to the audience is when I was first introduced to Priya, I told her this on the phone. I looked at your picture and there was an aura that just came through. And I didn't go and read more about her until like hours later because it was a LinkedIn profile that was sent to me. But the passion that you have and the good that you have for just the youth and everybody that shines through, and that aura is so resplendent on your face. And even when you walked in, this is our first time meeting, but it seems like I've known you. I've met you many a times. And so thank you for the good work. I know it's not easy, but as Priya said, there's hope in the smallest of things. If you'd like to support the simple good, I will leave the information in the description box. Thank you so much for such an inspiring conversation. Oh my God, I feel so inspired by you, even more motivated. Thank you for bringing and giving me some spark as well. Until next time, this is Between Us. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Priya and learning about the simple good. The simple good has done so much for the community and for the state of Chicago at large. Recently, as I am subscribed to the newsletter, I received an email from them which informed me that the simple good their grant actually has been canceled. And I know a lot of programs across our nation, including our parks, are impacted. But the work that Priya and her organization are doing is so critical, especially to our youth. We have seen the impact of COVID, the isolation that it has created, and it would be a shame to not have programs like the simple good not be supported. So if you feel inclined, and especially to the city and state of Chicago, please show up for your community and for programs like Priya's, their heart is in the good place, just to make sure that the youth have the resilience, the social emotional learning, so that they can be empowered for a better future tomorrow. There's so many good people just like Priya, not only in the state of Chicago, but all over the country doing great work. And I know times are tough, but if you can, support your local programs because it's for the greater good for all of us. Thank you.